Funny enough, we actually started as an AI SDR tool. Not many people know that. After the first day of launching, I thought, screw this. Like, this is not going to have a future. Now, I think AI SDR tools there is a future there, but I think the churn is always going to be through the roof. And luckily, I think I've been fairly validated because churn has been through the roof for a lot of these tools.
Fantastic word out there in the market around what you're building. What are the main engines of GTM that you're focusing on?
Historically, we've done such a good job with inbound. We actually haven't done any outbound at all. We have 600 people to 1,000 people sign up a month on a trial without us running ads.
That's a good number.
We run no outbound campaigns. It's pure through our own content.
What are the numbers of posts that you are posting on a daily basis?
I actually get more engagement, i.e. more impressions through commenting than I would on a typical post. Typical poor performing post. The first couple of months of this year, we did over 1 million impressions, for example, on my own LinkedIn.
Welcome to the Edbound podcast. I'm kind of super excited. So many things that I want to learn from you. Trigify has been making waves. So welcome, Max. I'm really happy to have you with us on the show.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, I think the best introduction that you could have from a founder is the one that they have written for their product, right? So I would love to hear, how do you present Trigify to investors and maybe customers?
Yeah, Trigify, it's funny. If you asked me this question 2 weeks ago, I would have given you a different answer because we're just kind of going through an evolution in the product. But I'll give you the new answer. And Trigify is a social intelligence tool that the easiest way of putting it is, imagine if you had millions and millions of posts. You want to understand key signals that come out of those posts. They could be signals that are representative of a time to reach out to a potential prospect for new business. It could be sentiment analysis. It could be a risk detection. It could be essentially any signal that is critical to your business. And you can start to empower your organization from the voice of the customer, and the voice of the customer being social data. So that's what we are currently. Before, we were a little bit more nuanced and focused on sales and marketing, and we've recently started to kind of branch out and become more of a holistic social intelligence tool.
Wow, social intelligence is such a hot area. I mean, I spoke with Adam Robinson, RB2B, and I'm sure you've come across the platform. He's all over LinkedIn, and I think it's time B2B marketing specifically kind of is done on the back of signals rather than being cold, because cold doesn't work anymore. Understand from your background that you were able to kind of grow a startup from 0 to 5 million in just about 18 months. And you were kind of at the helm of affairs there. So let's hear a little bit about that story and how the essence of all that you learned there, how did it lead to you starting Trigify? What was it that you saw as a potential problem or an insight that led you to this?
Well, I'll go back one company before because it ties in. So I previously, 2 companies ago, I worked for a company called Meltwater, which is a social listening and media intelligence. So focused on like news articles, PR, things like that. And then I went to work for another company called Sacchdev, which was a signal-based tool, which basically plucked out things like funding rounds and stuff like that, designed for sellers. The way that they were getting the signals was actually very similar to Meltwater. They were monitoring the news and then basically reading the news articles and pulling the signal out of that. And so if you look at those 2 experiences, they're actually very similar in terms of like the way that you sell the tool is totally different, but the actual kind of core concept was the same, which was gathering in social data, news data, and deriving signals with like a view, but their ICPs were different. And so I thought, well, what if there is a way that you could combine both of these tools together to create the ultimate kind of tool that can empower the whole organization and create workflows out of the back of that. And so Trigify was basically born as a result of me wanting to combine my knowledge from working at these 2 different companies and bringing that together into like one centralized product, more or less. And that's kind of like how we kind of came about, so to speak, or was the idea. But funny enough, we actually started as an AI SDR tool. Not many people know that. After the first day of launching, I thought, screw this. Like, this is not going to have a future. Now, I think AI SDR tools there is a future there, but I think the churn is always going to be through the roof. And luckily, I think I've been fairly validated because churn has been through the roof for a lot of these tools. Then we went into being more of an all-encompassing signal tool where we were focusing on every single signal under the sun. And then we then finally pivoted to focus on social. And that's kind of then where we've stayed. So there's been a lot of different versions as well of Trigify along the way, which is not many people kind of realize.
Wow. No, I hear that. And I believe from what we gathered, you also raised some funding for this tool recently. Is that right? I mean, just about $1 million kind of a round. Is that what was the number?
Yeah, just a little over a year ago, we raised $1.2 million dollars as a pre-seed.
Okay, fantastic. And that's the way to build it. I believe your audience, your target audience is not exactly like a B2C. So you're trying to optimize the capital. How big is the team now?
We actually just had a new starter join yesterday. So we're at about 5 now. Team's relatively lean, 3 engineers. Sorry, I should say 6. 3 engineers, myself, a COO, and...
Yeah. No, fantastic. So who's the target audience that you go after? Like, what's the ICP that you've identified for your platform?
Yeah, it's B2B companies that get decent traction on social media. That could be Reddit, YouTube, podcasts, like any kind of social form that you think of. And the actual individual that kind of uses Meltwater is typically anyone in the marketing department. So CMO, head of growth, demand gen individuals that kind of run the marketing ops side of things and can create flows out of the back end. Now, we do have some salespeople and stuff like that using us, but the tool, and I believe anyway, that signals should sit with the marketing team, and then the marketing team distributes that to the relevant department.
To the sales guys.
Yeah. To the sales guys, right? And kind of feeds them. And there's the whole argument, like this is like, back when the SDR was around, like where does the SDR sit? Should it sit in sales and marketing? And traditionally it's done in sales. And I'm of the camp that it should be in marketing. Like marketing should own all pipeline creation, whether that's warm or cold, and then empower the sales to start to close the leads. And that, I think in theory would create a close relationship between the two.
I completely agree with you. Almost everybody that I've spoken to, they tend to agree that giving sales the entire bit to kind of contact people, cold, warm, it's just kind of becoming a complicated workflow driven process. And I think it's not fair to hand it over to the sales guy. And I think it's also kind of gone out of hands of the traditional marketers. It's almost MarTech, right? I mean, I see your posts are amazing around the workflows that you build. And I think it's coming from part engineering, part business mind. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. It's like, I think just with the rise of AI in general, I think all roles are kind of changing and manifesting into, or evolving, I should say, into something new.
Yeah.
And I think with that is the rise of technical roles. And we've got new technical roles in sales. We've got new technical roles in marketing. And I think, you used to call it like a growth. Now they're calling it like GTM engineers, perhaps, whatever. It's just all of these roles are the same. They're just like a new title slapped on it for a new kind of digital age. But more or less, I think the marketeers need to own the channels. They need to be more technical now than what they were before. And they need to have the ability to extrapolate relevant information and disperse that to the relevant teams to keep them focused, right? And they need to be like the architect of, routing information around the relevant go-to-market departments.
Wow, that's such well articulated, man. I mean, this could be the title, right? I mean, routing the information. I mean, I'm going to extract this and put it on one of the posters in our office. But fantastic. Yeah, that sounds kind of how the entire GTM landscape's evolving. Right now, you are a very lean team, and I think you're making some waves. Fantastic word out there in the market around what you're building. What are the main engines of GTM that you're focusing on? And let's talk about the next 3 months. I mean, is that the period of your experiments, or do you look at a longer horizon?
So we have historically been PLG, like as a go-to-market motion. And with this change that I mentioned, so we're going more like intelligence focused. We're creating agents off the back of social data. And there's also like a workflow kind of builder and element coming into Trigify. With that in view, like our motion is going to change towards more of like a hybrid based motion. So we're going to start having some sales led, and we're going to go more upstream. And we really want to focus on becoming a little bit more sticky, a little bit more embedded, actually creating really decent kind of flows and all of that with our customers. And so we're going through a case of transition at the moment over the next couple of months, where the product's evolving, the marketing strategy is evolving, and we're finally going to be introducing some outbound elements, because historically we've done such a good job with inbound. We actually haven't done any outbound at all. We have 600 people to 1,000 people sign up a month on a trial without us running ads.
That's a good number.
Yeah, we run no ads, we run no outbound campaigns. It's pure through our own content, and we get a lot of like natural UGC mentions as well. And so we are going to have to turn on outbound because we want to be a little bit more targeted with the ICP that we're going after. Changing a content strategy that has been working and tailoring it for a different ICP takes time. You can't just suddenly decide, okay, I'm going to do this. Like, it takes a while to start getting those new people following you. It takes a while to start generating traction in that new kind of clique, because that's what they are, right? On social media, it's just like, it's cliques of titles that like engage with each other's content. So that's always going to be a lagging indicator, essentially. And so you go outbound to like pierce into that new ICP. And so we'll be doing that through various different agents and various different channels and things like that.
Let's drill down a little bit into the two things that you spoke about. You getting 600 to 1,000 signups every month. Let's drill down. How does it look? Did you start SEO? You mentioned content. Is it primarily LinkedIn, Insta, YouTube? I just want to open the playbook, because that's always my goal, that if somebody is listening for this for the first time, they should be able to understand, what is it that somebody needs to do to get there?
Yeah. 90% of our traffic or our signups comes through social media.
What channels exactly? Like, what platforms?
I would say it started out as 100% LinkedIn, and then it's more split to like 80-20 between LinkedIn and YouTube. Wow. We're actually trying to disperse more onto YouTube as time goes on, because LinkedIn's becoming a little bit long story, but LinkedIn becomes harder and harder with the algorithms at the moment. And YouTube is actually very, very good for B2B, but people don't, I think, really understand that and can capitalize on that. The way that we view it is we have a really, really solid content strategy. We build through personal brands. The content is a very mixed form between top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel content. And we use LinkedIn, ironically, as more of a higher arching, like, hey, this is going to go capture a lot of attention. And then we use YouTube as more bottom of the funnel content, which will then convert them, because it's more long formed. People will watch it for longer, as more of a converting ability or an educational perspective. Yeah. So long story short is we've really focused on the content. Everyone in Trigify posts, and we created a lot of lead magnets and giving a lot of value away for free. Like, historically, marketing gates everything that they do. We went the opposite route. We were like, okay, we're going to give everything away totally for free. We're going to be incredibly transparent with the process, and we're going to do a lot of things that seem very, very, very cool to do on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And, it's just worked incredibly well. Like, the first couple of months of this year, we did over 1 million impressions, for example, on my own LinkedIn.
Wow.
And what then starts to happen is, as time has gone on with us focusing very hard on our content strategy, we've noticed that more people, and we incentivize and we encourage it within our Slack communities, more people have started posting about Trigify organically.
So you're pushing every customer onto a Slack channel, are you? Like,
every customer goes into a Slack community where we then share any posts. And by sharing posts on people posting about Trigify, it encourages other users to start doing the same thing. And then before you know it, you're getting 200, 300, 400 mentions on LinkedIn organically without you paying anyone to do anything. And that's
a brilliant hack.
Yeah, it creates a network viral effect. People get afraid to post something if they never see anyone else posting. You don't have any, there are not many mavericks in the world these days. Like, most people are just sheep, I would say. And they'll follow, right? And so if you can create the illusion that there's so many people posting, there's so many people doing it, you need to follow, then that's what starts to happen. And that is what has happened. And they've basically become, our voices, essentially. And if I was to break it down, because we can do it through Trigify, we can actually have a look at revenue attribution from an individual post. The first 6 months of Trigify's journey, the majority of the leads came primarily through me, my LinkedIn. And then I'm now more 30%, and the rest is more through our customers and their voices as well, which is pretty cool.
Those are some fantastic numbers, man. And a great hack, because pushing people to give comments organically is not that easy. I just clicked a screen capture yesterday on Zoho. We use Zoho Social, and I saw this pop up. do you want to extend your plan by 100 days? Here are the options. And that's kind of incentivizing for me to go and post about them. And what you just mentioned is a brilliant way, because you're hacking it. Now, going back to the LinkedIn posting and what you've been able to achieve on LinkedIn, what are the kind of numbers of posts that you are posting on a daily basis? I know you are at about 25,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is a great number, because the engagement, you're right that LinkedIn isn't easy to crack. And I personally also made some mistakes at the setup of the profile. We had the wrong people follow us, or not the right audience kind of talk to us. And when you pivot or when you go into a new dimension, those old guys that follow you don't want to listen to these messages anymore. And your, kind of, let's say, engagement goes down. And the gurus on LinkedIn suggest that, go and unfollow, like just disconnect with those guys, which is not easy, because you're talking of 25,000. I am at possibly about 13,000 or so, but it's tough, right? It's not an easy job.
It's not
so
easy.
How many posts?
I post anywhere between 3 to 5 times a week.
Okay, well, it's a good number.
At my heyday, I was doing about 5 times a week, which is like basically every business working day. I've dropped it off because, there is a whole argument like quantity over quality. I think LinkedIn did used to really encourage like the frequency and you did very well if you posted very frequently. Now what I see is actually the posts that generally add value are the ones that do well. Like you can't actually really get more simple. Like, does the post actually truly add value to everyone? If it does, like, it does do very well. And it is just kind of as simple as that. The challenge is like, what is valuable to your current audience? And then and the other thing, which is sad, but it will always be the case, is how good is the hook, the opening sentence that can attract, people to kind of stop. And what is that kind of like, what would make someone stop scrolling, right? But 3 to 5 times a week. But the other key thing is commenting. So I actually have like an hour a day where I'm basically dedicated to just commenting as much as I can, but adding a lot of value. And I actually get more engagement, i.e. more impressions through commenting than I would on a typical post, typical poor performing post. So what I'm doing is hedging the bets and making sure that like I get enough eyeballs on me, on my brand through the comments. I have the correct kind of headline. So people, when they see my name on a comment, they kind of know what I do. And that's kind of the strategy as well. And a lot of people don't spend the time commenting, but if you do, again, but the key thing is it has to be valuable content. You can't just be like, this sounds great, or like, whatever. Like you have to like either oppose the opinion or build on it, or, provide an alternative view or whatever. And that, and funny enough, if you were starting your profile out today, that's all I would do. It was I would just go and comment. I wouldn't even bother posting because it was going to take you a while to get that going. I would just comment and connect with the right ICP, and eventually you can start adding and posting, and then it will catch up.
That's a very uncommon suggestion that I hear usually from people. What you're talking about, commenting, makes a lot of sense. And my question is always around commenting. Are you using AI to write your posts, write your comments, or do any part of your effort on LinkedIn at all? If yes, what's the percentage?
No on the comments. I do all my comments myself. The post, I have an agent that will give me ideas. So it gives me like what the topic should be about and things that I should hit on. It doesn't write the post. So it gives me, it's like an ideation agent, essentially. I don't want anything to ever write the post completely for me, because I don't think you could ever get it to the right level that you'd be happy with, and you would keep that authenticity. But I have it give me, every day I have like top, middle, and bottom of the funnel content inspiration ideas. It's building on all of the previous posts that I've done. So there's also like a flow, and there's a consistency with the type of content that I do. So that helps me create 60 to 70% of the content that I do. It gives me the ideas on what I should be posting about. The rest is like maybe ones that I just, I see in the day, or I have an idea, or, whatever it is, right? And I start posting. But the other key thing about me is, if you'll see, pretty much 95% of my content is video based as well. Everything that I do.
I saw that. It's very different from anyone that I've seen. You do tons of workflow demonstrations and, just showing up people. How do they build the signal? How do they use it? Stuff like that, right? So it looks like you're trying to combine what you do on YouTube and have like a one effort bucket, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
That's what it is?
kind of. So like LinkedIn will always be the abbreviated version.
Yeah.
And it will wet your whistle, but not enough that you know how to do it. Like that's the key, I think, with my whole strategy is I'm going to make this highly educational. I'm going to give you pretty much everything that you need to know, but not quite enough. Like you're going to have to go seek more information from me or try and work with me to fit that last piece of the puzzle. And that is the most challenging like balance to strike. You can't make it too complicated that people won't know what they're doing, because then it kind of just goes over their head. You can't make it too easy, because then people will also be like, well, okay, I can totally get that, right? You need to make it a fine balance. And this isn't just about becoming popular, right? Because this is about how can you create a LinkedIn that actually converts. I can really care less about the number of followers. It's more like every post, how much would that convert into a free trial into Trigify? And the key to that is give them enough, but not enough. And then you give them a little bit more on YouTube, but again, not everything. It's just like it's like a stage, and then eventually they convert to have a conversation with me or with the team, and from there away you kind of go there in the sales process.
So do you try and bake this funnel? Like you're saying that every post should eventually convert it into a trial. Most of the old world knowledge about GTM was that you'll have to bake in a call to action, like go here, sign up for a trial. If you want to try more, go here. And the new format is context engineering. So what's your best format or trick?
I actually am against the grain. I have no call to action. I rely on the content being good enough that they will want to hang around and stay and follow me. The only call to action that I ever do is I talk about my YouTube channel where there's more information. The YouTube channel, there's no call to action. It's just, okay, like here's all of the content. And you know what? Like I feel like it actually means that it's a little bit more authentic and people don't feel like they're being sold to. And therefore they actually go through the funnel more naturally than if I was to be like, hey, like go and sign up here and you get a little bit more information, go do this. And then you get a little bit more. Like I think really, like, at the end of the day, if the product works, if the marketing is interesting enough and the content you're talking about is interesting enough, they will convert. It's like as simple as that. And if they don't, that is because maybe you don't have product market fit, and maybe the content isn't actually resonating with the ICP the way that you actually thought it was going to. But you don't know that unless you can actually attribute social to signups. And we're fortunate enough with obviously Trigify, that's what we focus on, is social, obviously social intelligence, right? One part of that being, can we attribute everything down to an individual post, which we can. And then we can then actually analyze what is having an impact, what content is having an impact, and bake it all the way back to the very start, the very first point that they engage with us or someone talking about Trigify.
You know, I was talking to Simo, one of the co-founders at Folk, the CRM, right? I mean, I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yeah.
And we were discussing about this. They've been building their own attribution technology for figuring out what LinkedIn posts really converts the max for them. I think I must connect you both, because I feel like there's a synergy, and, you know, I mean, they want it to be a sort of a part of their platform in certain way. But I mean, this is, I think, a good intro because it saves time, right? And I'm going to try this myself. I believe that getting these signals and attributions, you know, is super powerful. So YouTube effort, where you're creating maybe deeper educational content and you're truly using what I like to call as the Edbound strategy, you know, give people not just a plain outbound or inbound, but layer it with an educational piece of content. And your lead is far more qualified. And that's what our platform kind of is centered around, you know, help people build all this content academy, like teach people and capture lead with exact attribution. So that's the idea. And I think you kind of living that with all of your content centered around teaching people these workflows.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're fortunate, right? Like, because we're obviously, you know, a marketing sales tool. So you can kind of live and breathe it. So it also fits quite nicely. I can just talk about building and scaling Trigify and how like it fits in. And a lot of the time I do that, right? It's not actually specifically on Trigify. I reference them in part of like some level of flow or agent that I built or whatever. But maybe the post isn't on Trigify and I'm using, you know, 6 other different tools perhaps. But, you know, that's one thing I will say, like we are fortunate that there is like a natural it's very easy to create content as well. That seems natural because of like what we do, which I think is kind of key as well to helping this whole thing kind of tick the way that it has been ticking.
Wow. So content is the main growth channel so far. It has been or proven to be the best for you. And you mentioned something else as well, that you've now got everybody in the team writing content. And I feel that to be a huge hack. But I have a question for you, which I don't know, how did you kind of get that right? And a lot of people who are engineers, or let's say designers, do not have the knack for getting the context of the message right? I mean, so they could be all over the place. Do you have a agent that you're using with AI where you're helping them be on track, be on point?
Yeah.
Or you're just handing them the posts
No,
yourself?
it's the same concept. Like we write the basis of it.
Yeah.
So they have like the focus points, but I want everyone to have their own stamp on the post. And then, whether they
It could be an approval. I mean, the stamp could just be an approval, right? You give them 5 ideas and say, pick 2.
Yep, it can be that. We did that with our CTO for a while, and then he eventually was like, "Oh, I got the gist. I want to like try and write my stuff."
Okay.
Definitely did. And then but like even if they have no followers, the reality is a post on average probably gets like anywhere between 200 to 500 impressions, maybe a little bit more. Sorry, 200 to 500 impressions is probably like an average. And if they're but you it seems a small amount, but like you add that up over like 5 people, then you're suddenly talking like decent amounts. You got a team of 20, sales team. Like it's so important that you get your team to post. And we also incentivize that. We have competitions that we run internally. Yeah, we run different like incentivizations on who posts the most, who gets the most engagement, who actually gets the most signups off a post as well. So we're trying to encourage like positive behavioral patterns with their posting strategy. And again, I definitely think it helps, right? If I look at sales teams and I look at my past as a seller, one of the reasons I didn't want to post is if I posted and someone inbounded, it would just go into the marketing team, and the marketing team would route it to any seller. So it's like, well, what's really the point in me posting?
And Trigify solves that.
Yeah, exactly. So we know we have a dashboard. We know exactly how many leads came from who, based on whether they engaged the very first time. And again, it gamifies it, makes it quite fun, bit of internal competition, but the ultimate benefit is that everyone's starting to post.
Yeah, I mean that's a great strategy, and I know teams that are like 10 people, 12 people, they're seeing some amazing results, because you're right, impressions do kind of stack up, and you're cumulatively increasing the number of people that do see your content. So yeah, that's brilliant.
Exactly.
So all your GTM has been centered around content on LinkedIn, YouTube, and you're just kind of getting everybody to pull in and push for signups, trial accounts and stuff like that. Now, on YouTube, what is the main strategy? Is it only education? And how many people by the way, how many followers do you have there now?
It's a good question, I can tell you. So we basically break it down into 2 forms. We have 2 channels. We have like a Trigify channel. On the Trigify channel, that's very educational content. It's very, we do a lot of building in public on that, but it's mainly like an educational like focus point. So on there, we have about 500 followers. We get anywhere between like 5,000 to 6,000 views on different videos a week. Sure. So like the views are really good. And then on mine, we only just launched mine 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and I'm coming up to 400. So like mine's growing way faster than the Trigify one, which has been around.
Oh yeah, that's true on all channels. I mean, personal brands work better, so I think you'll see better results there.
Yeah.
So what's the strategy? Mostly educational content on both channels.
So on mine, it's like the journey as like a CEO and how I'm scaling Trigify. So it's a lot around like the strategies that I'm using. It's very bottom of the funnel content. These videos could not be on Trigify potentially. Again, it's just giving value. If someone starts to follow me, probably every 1 in 3 videos might reference Trigify in some shape or form. So naturally, they'll start to convert, right? Like it's you're building a brand around yourself, but that brand is centered and linked to the company, and people will go check out that company because it's like a natural thing that you would do. Be like, oh, I'm gonna have a look at this company, to see what this is all about. B2C brands have been doing this a long time, and they're aware that you don't have to just like plaster the name the whole time. But B2B brands for a very long time and still doing it think that everything has to be completely focused on the business to generate any level of like decent level of traction from an MQL or even an SQL perspective. And it's just not the case. And it's not the case that you need to block everything. You give away value and you get value and you get traction back in return.
It was invented by a British guy, Richard Branson. I mean, much before social media existed, if you look at the guy, I mean, he would fly out in a balloon in Japan before he would launch Virgin as a brand in Japan and be all over the newspapers, news, and do some crazy stunt, be that perfect purple cow, like they say, gets noticed. And I think he invented it much before even social media was there. So I think we're just kind of trying to capitalize on the eyeballs that are there on the social media platforms.
Yeah, you just make noise. And as long as you have a way of capturing that noise and making sure that noise is hitting the right audience, you quits in. The one thing that I will say to this is like just making noise for noise sake and just going too broad and wide ranging. It doesn't help anyone. Like, again, followers and a viral post is just vanity metrics if nothing is happening as an end result.
You haven't thought about Instagram, Max? Because I know a lot of B2B brands crack Insta really well and use the same playbook as LinkedIn. Would Trigify work on Insta? I mean, and do you look at Insta right now?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those things that like we are only a year and a half, coming up to 2 years in this journey. You can't do every social straight away. And you can't master it. You can't make good traction. And I'm a big believer that the more focused you are, the better you crack a nut, right? And so we started with LinkedIn, and I feel like now we've got enough organic traction there that we then now adding in YouTube. YouTube is in its infancy. And so we need to put more attention, more focus in getting that going before then we focus on another social. When we started, we did actually start with Twitter. We started with Instagram. We started with LinkedIn. We started YouTube. It doesn't matter how much content syndication that you do. Every platform requires its own style, its own level of focus, its own content strategy. So I'm a believer in crack one social, whatever you define as cracked, then you move on to the next. And we will focus on Instagram. We'll probably actually focus on. I think TikTok's got huge value as well for B2B brands. And then, it's just one at a time, basically.
Yeah, no, it's a great strategy. Can you also attribute social media posts done by influencer partners or affiliates using Trigify? And is that something that you guys are using as your GTM playbook yet or not?
We've been using it, but not in a traditional way. Like we have done a couple of paid posts here and there, but typically we have free influencers. So we have like a group of like creators that we work very closely with. They get access to beta parts of the platform. They sit on like our customer advisory board and give us a lot of feedback around things. In return, we do like webinars with them. We give them a lot of exposure through our own social channels, and they post through there. So we've done like, I guess, a non-traditional style of influencer marketing. I think if I was to start doing paid marketing, I wouldn't start with ads. I would start with influencers. And that's very much something that we're evaluating right now for like this new ICP is how can we penetrate that market and make a lot of noise. And we will probably do some level of paid in that kind of realm to get some hype going. And then once you've got hype going, you just keep building it and then it can start to go into organic. So it's very good, I think, to generate traction and create the illusion. Like I said, if there's the illusion, a lot of people talking about you, people then will start talking about you more organically. So you can kind of do that. I don't know if you've ever seen like flash mobs, dancing and train stations. It's like a similar concept psychologically, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's actually very valid. But you could measure it with Trigify. I mean, if you had those influencer partners, and I think that makes it a great tool because, if you have third-party partners, attribution is one of the biggest issues. I mean, Bitly links or affiliate links don't always work the best.
No, and again, like I would rather like not many call to action. So again, the only reason you do that is because you want to see if many people are clicking on those links. Like that's the only reason that you put a link into the post in the first place, because that's the only way that you can attribute it. Although they say you add a link in a LinkedIn post and it lowers the impression count. I don't know how true or not that is, but it's a theory in any case. And so, you could track it all like naturally without the influencer needing to do anything. you can just simply monitor them and monitor the post and then basically create the attribution back.
All right. Now we've understood what you do right now. Let's move to what you're planning to do. I mean, you're looking at Outbound right now. So if you're looking at Outbound, what are the channels, tools that you're kind of finalizing, or are you in the stage of building up your stack for your outbound outreach?
So we're going to use Trigify, naturally. We're going to monitor people engaging with content around social media, social intelligence, signals, intent data as a whole. We're going to monitor people engaging with similar brands or competitors. And we're going to monitor people engaging with influencers that talk a lot about this space. For example, like Chris Walker is a really good example. That's going to create an evergreen campaign, and we can then start to outbound to these individuals through email or LinkedIn. So that's like one acquisition channel. The other is, again, we're using our tool for everything. We monitoring. So Pavilion members is a great place for us to go. They're like usually anywhere between seed to kind of Series D funded individuals. We pulled a list of every single Pavilion member, and we're actively monitoring all of their companies. And the signal here is like, as soon as negative sentiment, or negative is a sentiment, but negative press, i.e. from a social perspective, so negative social mentions happens, we reach out off the back of that. And we find that like, you could reach out and say, hey, have you seen that you've been mentioned here positively? They're like, oh, this is really cool. But it's way more impactful if you'd be like, hey, you've got a whole Reddit forum bitching massively about you and how like a lot of users are going to leave you. That's going to convert at a way higher rate and is than going positively. Yeah, we also have that campaign going, but you'll notice everything that we're doing is what we call like dynamic signals. So you've got two concepts. It's either a static signal or a dynamic signal. A static signal is more like relevancy. Are they a relevant lead? Can you have a look at any historical signals that would be a reason to reach out? And dynamic is more like it's happening. What happens today won't happen tomorrow. So you start with creating the list. You make sure that they're relevant leads. You have really focus on segmentation, and then you use the kind of signals to either score or be the reason to reach out. And in our case, we're using it as the reason to reach out. But we're not focusing specifically on that signal. We're focusing more on the pain that signal would create. And that is like kind of what unlocks the potential.
So when you measure these signals, are you using tools like Clay to build this in a specific outbound format, or what's the plan? I mean, how do you segregate the target audience? And then obviously you'll have to pull their email information and stuff from maybe Apollo or some other tool like that. So what's the stack going to look like?
So I use N8N for the large majority of like my kind of automation. And if I'm doing like more of a static list and then kind of checking to see if there's any negative content on these individuals, I do use a tool like Clay. I don't use Clay. I use a tool called Freckle. Freckle is like a Clay alternative. It's a bit more simple to use. But I primarily work with the guys because great bunch of guys and really exciting roadmap. I'm a bit of a stickler for working with smaller companies that have like a really exciting.
You like to back the underdog.
I like to back the underdog, or I like that. Like I recently realized that I also like backing, because I'm British. I like backing British companies as well. It's nice to see, you don't get many SaaS companies coming out of the UK. So like our CRM, for example, is Atia. That was just like by chance, because I didn't even realize that they were British until they're great CRM, great tool. And then I realized I was like, okay, feels good. But I back the underdog. So we're using Freckle. Our stack looks like Freckle, Trigify, Atio. We use Lead Magic, big fans of Jesse as well. And he actually helps us a lot from an email and mobile data perspective. And then we use Smart Lead for sending emails. And then we use HeyReach for any level of like LinkedIn automation that we would do in terms of reaching out to people.
That's quite a handful, man. But I know most of these tools, and I think you've got a mighty stack. I mean, the whole GTM engineering there is to kind of stitch it all together and make sure that pieces kind of fit well, and it just passes on information to the right one. So I understand you put like an N8N as your operator, that kind of passes signals from one platform to the other. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I get the roadmap inbound to outbound, and that sounds super exciting. I mean, what is the big plan for the coming 3 months? I mean, you mentioned about you evolving the product. You're going to experiment with this new GTM. Is there anything big coming out of the stable? Trigify is going to announce a cool feature soon.
Yeah, so it's the introduction of agents. So we're giving the ability for users to build agents inside of Trigify to leverage the social data. So if you think about it, most agents are great, but they don't have access to social data. You can't have access to social data unless you have a social provider. And so I think we're really uniquely placed to build some highly sophisticated agents that can do some very cool stuff when it comes to creating bespoke, customized signals that you could surface and then automatically route to various different departments like the product team. An example would be like, okay, there's been someone talking about UI, UX issues. It could run a bunch of research check to see if there's been any more mentions of that particular kind of UX flaw. If there is, it then could go and create a linear ticket, for example, automatically, and do that inside of the Trigify platform. And then you could do the same for sales. You could do the same for marketing and so on and so on. You could create executive summary reports, competitor intelligence. It's pretty endless, which is why it's really exciting. And so it's the introduction of agents inside of Trigify, which is going to be coming next couple of months.
That's going to be huge.
Yeah,
that's going to be huge, man. I am so forward. I mean, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm actually going to use it myself. I'll hit you up to possibly get a trial license and sign up and give it a go. But yeah, super exciting times, man. And I kind of really love the way you're building the playbook, and you made Trigify such an important part of the whole stack, which kind of testifies the capabilities that the platform holds. But yeah, I mean, my last question would be, if you were to give an advice on how companies in B2B SaaS spaces, let's say somebody just like you is starting to target B2B companies, right? I mean, what's going to be that one lesson that you've learned yourself and you would wish people to apply on day one?
From a marketing perspective, or from just like general building?
From marketing perspective.
That's a good question. And it's, I'm going to keep it like what I've been like talking all about. And it's like focus on, I believe that you should focus on a content strategy faster than you should focus on an SEO strategy. I really believe that. Like, I feel like you can get, if done right, you can get more traction faster, and it enables you to work out what resonates with your audience, which then can kind of be extrapolated into like your SEO strategy, into your product strategy, into everything. So develop a content strategy that resonates with your audience, because that is the most powerful asset that you will ever have as a business. And I believe, in this day and age, there's no such thing as a moat. The only thing that you could have is the brand equity now. And I think DeepSeek and kind of OpenAI prove that like anyone can build any product in theory, but you can't replicate a brand. OpenAI has a great brand. Like, you would buy OpenAI for the brand, let alone for, the models. And they don't have the best models anymore, but they have the best spread, the best network, because of the brand that they have basically created over time. And I think that's true to this day. And I think the best way of creating brand is through a content strategy at the moment.
That's so profound and powerful, man. Really like it. And what is the LLM that you like, right? I want to ask, since you mentioned OpenAI isn't the best anymore.
Yeah, the two that I like at the moment is Claude 3.7 and Gemini, the new 2.5.
Have you tried Grok?
I tried Grok. Yeah, I like Grok. Grok, I would say, sits at about, I would say right now it's Claude, then Gemini. Well, it depends on the use case, because I do love ChatGPT 03 model. I think it's incredibly good. It's not good for coding. It's not good for, mundane tasks. It's expensive, but it's incredibly good at like reasoning. So I use that for more of like if I've got a question about like a business strategy, I use that. For most of my workflows, I will either use Claude or Gemini, depending on what I'm doing. And then coming in kind of fourth and fifth is Grok and DeepSeek as well.
Okay. No, thank you so much. Those are some powerful golden nuggets of information for people to digest. But I mean, really, I believe one of the best parts of being an entrepreneur, and especially people like you, when they share freely, and you mentioned that's part of your content strategy. I think it's really such a great thing to do, and it helps so many people who are just starting out on the journeys, because the stack, the strategy, the GTM playbook, everything that you spoke about, I'm pretty sure it's going to help a lot of people just cut short all that experimentation that's going to cost them money and time. So thank you so much. Really appreciate the time and effort on this, Max.
Well, good. No worries. This has been good fun. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah. Thank you.